Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to deep dive into something that's been on everyone's mind lately, the future of money.
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
So we're checking out this video called The Future of Money, Traditional versus Digital Currency.
Right.
And get this, it says that digital transactions can happen like that instantly.
Wow.
But someone waiting for a traditional bank transfer could be waiting like days.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been there.
It's crazy to think about. So it really makes you wonder, are we like on the verge of a financial revolution or something?
It certainly feels that way, yeah. And what's really interesting is that this whole shift towards digital currency could have a huge impact on all those people around the world.
Mm.
You know, the video says 1.7 billion who don't even have access to traditional banking.
Oh, wow.
So imagine like the possibilities if everyone had a safe and easy way to manage their money.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing. But okay, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's like rewind a bit.
Okay.
We all know about cash, right? Good old-fashioned coins and bills. Uh-huh.
It seems so simple, but how did we even get to this point?
Well, it's actually a pretty fascinating story. You know, way back in the day, people used to barter.
Barter? Like trading a chicken for, I don't know, a loaf of bread.
Exactly. Like you could trade a cow for some brain.
I can't even imagine the logistics of that.
It was a whole different world. But yeah, money, like we know it today, came about because people needed a much easier and efficient way to trade.
So cash basically solved the whole barter problem. Makes sense. But now we're talking about a whole new system, digital currency. So what's driving this shift? Like, why are we even talking about this?
Well, for one thing, traditional currency has its limitations. Think about it. Like, carrying around a ton of cash is, well, it's risky, and it's just plain inconvenient.
Yeah, true. Nobody wants to walk around with wads of cash.
Right. And then there's international bank transfers. Don't even get me started on the fees and the wait times. Ugh, it's like watching paint dry.
I feel that. I've definitely been stuck waiting for those. Yeah, so digital currency is basically offering a way out of all that, like a potential solution.
Okay, so it's like we're hitting the limits of what cash can do for us.
Exactly. And that's where digital currency steps in.
Makes sense.
So digital currency, it exists purely online. It's not tied to any bank or government.
It's like the Wild West of finance.
Kinda, yeah. And the video uses Bitcoin as the main example.
Oh, yeah, Bitcoin. Everyone's heard of that.
It was launched back in 2009, and it uses this thing called blockchain technology to make sure transactions are secure and transparent.
Okay, Bitcoin I kind of get. But this blockchain thing, that still sounds a little mysterious to me.
Right, I get that.
Yeah.
Imagine like a digital ledger that's shared across a whole network of computers. Every time a transaction happens, it gets recorded on this ledger, and it's verified by multiple computers.
So instead of just one bank keeping track of everything, it's like a whole bunch of computers double-checking each other's work.
Exactly. And that makes it really secure and tough to mess with.
So instead of trusting one bank, you're trusting this whole network of computers. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about things, for sure. But, you know, the video also mentions that Bitcoin is, well, it can be pretty volatile.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Like, its value can go up and down like crazy, right?
Exactly. The video actually gives a pretty dramatic example. Like, Bitcoin's value plummeted from $60,000 to, like, half that amount.
Yikes. Okay, so maybe not for the faint of heart. You've got to have a strong stomach for that kind of roller coaster ride.
Yeah, for sure. You really have to be aware of that volatility if you're even thinking about getting into crypto.
Noted. But the video also mentions stablecoins, right? Those seem a little calmer, maybe? Like, are they for people who don't like roller coasters?
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Stablecoins are designed to address that whole volatility problem. They peg their value to something more stable, like the US dollar, for example.
Oh, okay, so they try to keep things more steady.
Exactly. But even though they're pegged to something stable, you know, they're still part of this new and constantly changing landscape.
Right, so we still need to be careful.
Definitely. There are like different types of stablecoins out there, and each one has its own risks.
Got it. So with all these different digital currencies popping up, it feels like, I don't know, like we're at a crossroads or something. So what are the big advantages that are driving this whole digital currency wave?
Well, the video highlights three main advantages. First, speed. Like, imagine sending money across the world and it arrives in like seconds.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Right. It's a huge difference compared to waiting days with a traditional bank transfer.
Okay, I'm sold on speed. What else?
Second big advantage.
Yeah.
Lower fees. Digital currency fees are way lower than what you'd pay with a bank or a credit card company.
That's a big deal, especially if you're doing business internationally or sending money abroad.
Exactly. And then the third big advantage, it's all about financial inclusion. Remember those 1.7 billion people we talked about who don't have access to banks? Well, digital currency could give them access to financial services.
So it could really level the playing field.
Exactly.
Wow, it sounds like digital currencies have a lot going for them. But I know there are also concerns, right? Like, should we be worried about diving into this new world?
That's a great question. And it's definitely smart to be aware of the potential challenges. We'll talk more about those in a bit. But first, let's just take a moment to let all this sink in.
Yeah, good idea. It's a lot to process. We've gone from bartering chickens to Bitcoin in like, what, 15 minutes?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to think about how far we've come and where we might be headed.
Yeah, it really is. And we'll be back in a flash to unpack those concerns and explore what the future might hold for all of us. Stay tuned.
May soon.
All right, so before we took a moment to think, we were like super excited about all the possibilities of digital currencies.
Yeah, the potential is definitely huge.
But I know there are some concerns too, right? What are some of the downsides we should keep in mind?
Yeah, you're right. We got to be realistic about things. One big concern the video brings up is security. So, like, blockchain technology itself is super secure.
Okay.
But digital wallets, where you actually keep your digital currency, those can be vulnerable to hacking.
Oh, I see.
It's kind of like, you have this super secure bank vault,
Mm-hmm.
but then someone figures out how to pick the lock on your little safe deposit box inside.
That's a really good analogy, actually. So it sounds like protecting your digital wallet is super important.
For sure. Absolutely.
What other challenges did the video talk about?
Well, another concern is the whole regulation thing. Like, governments around the world, they're still trying to figure out how to deal with digital currencies.
Yeah.
Some countries are all for it. They've embraced them.
Right.
But others have actually banned them completely.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of all over the place.
It really is. And that uncertainty can make things really tricky,
Oh.
especially for businesses.
Yeah, totally. It's like, how do you plan for the future when the rules keep changing?
Exactly. It's a tough spot to be in.
So speaking of governments, the video also mentioned something called CBDCs. I think that's what it was called. Central bank digital currencies.
Oh, yeah, CBDCs. Those are basically digital versions of, like, a country's regular currency. But it's issued and controlled by the central bank.
So it's like instead of using dollars or euros, we'd use digital dollars or digital euros.
Exactly. Think of it like
Mhm.
a digital dollar or a digital euro, yeah. And they could actually offer some big advantages, like faster transactions, lower fees,
Uh-huh.
and maybe even better financial inclusion.
So instead of going through our banks, we could potentially like hold and use digital currency directly with the central bank.
Yeah, potentially. It's definitely a radical idea.
So what would be like the big benefits of that?
Well, one of the biggest potential benefits is that it could really streamline, like, sending money across borders. Imagine sending money overseas without all the usual delays and fees.
That would be amazing. No more waiting forever for that transfer to go through.
Right. And it could also make things safer and easier for people who don't have bank accounts.
Yes.
They could participate in the economy more easily.
That's a great point. It could really open up a lot of opportunities. But are there any downsides to CBDCs that we should be thinking about?
Of course. Like with anything, there are always trade-offs. One concern is privacy. Like, if the central bank has a direct view of every single transaction you make,
Mm-hmm.
well, some people are worried about potential surveillance.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, where do you draw the line between like innovation and protecting people's privacy?
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of what happens to regular banks. Like, if everyone starts holding CBDCs directly with the central bank, what happens to all the commercial banks?
Yeah, that's a good point. It could really shake things up.
Yeah, it's a big unknown.
It seems like we're headed for some pretty major changes no matter what.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. The
Yeah.
future of money is evolving super quickly, and it's exciting to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
But it's also important to be aware of all the potential consequences, both good and bad, and make sure we're creating a system that benefits everyone.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the early days of bartering to the rise of digital currencies, and now even this idea of a cashless society.
It's a wild ride.
It really is. We've talked about the potential benefits like, increased efficiency, financial inclusion, and global connectivity. But we also dug into some of the big concerns around security, privacy, regulation, and the environmental impact of all this new technology.
For sure. There's a lot to think about.
This deep dive has been a good reminder that the future of money isn't set in stone.
Yeah,
It's something that we're all shaping together.
exactly. We all have a role to play in this.
And on that note, I think it's time to shift gears a bit. We're going to dive into another fascinating aspect of the video, the environmental impact of all this.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
We'll be right back to explore that after a quick break. Stay tuned. So we've talked about all the potential upsides and downsides of digital currencies and even the idea of a cashless society. It seems like there's so much to think about as we navigate this whole financial revolution. But before we wrap up, there's this one thing in the video that really got me thinking.
Oh yeah. What was that?
Well, it touched on the environmental impact of digital currencies, especially like the energy consumption of Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies. Honestly, I've heard people talking about this, but it always seemed a bit, I don't know, technical for me.
Yeah, I get that. It can be kind of a complex issue.
So can you maybe break it down for me, like in a way that even I can understand?
Sure, I could try. So basically, the concern is all about the process of mining Bitcoin. It takes a ton of computing power to solve these really complicated math problems, and that uses a lot of energy. And that's what has people worried about the sustainability of cryptocurrencies, especially as they become more popular.
So it's like a trade-off, right? We get all these benefits from blockchain technology, but it comes with this like huge energy bill.
That's a good way to put it. It's definitely something to consider.
Are there like any ways to make it less harmful to the environment?
Yeah, definitely. People are working on that. One approach is to switch to different types of blockchain technologies that are more energy efficient. For example, some of the newer cryptocurrencies use something called proof of stake, which uses way less energy than Bitcoin's proof of work system.
Interesting. So maybe it's not all doom and gloom on the environmental side of things.
Yeah, exactly. There are definitely people working on making it more sustainable.
So what can we as like regular people do if we're concerned about the environmental impact of all this?
Well, we actually have a lot of power as consumers and investors. We can choose to support cryptocurrencies that are more aligned with our values, like the ones that prioritize energy efficiency or that use renewable energy sources for mining.
It's like voting with your wallet, right? Choosing to put your money where your heart is.
Exactly. And we can also advocate for policies that encourage responsible innovation. Governments have a big role to play in this, by encouraging the development and adoption of greener technologies.
So it's not just about individual choices, it's also about pushing for bigger changes.
Yeah, it's about working together to create a more sustainable system.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels like this whole deep dive has been such a roller coaster ride. We've learned so much about the future of money, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
It's been a wild ride for sure. We went from the history of money to the rise of digital currencies and even the possibility of a world without cash. And now we've even talked about the environmental impact of all of this.
It's incredible to think about how much is changing and how fast it's all happening. What are your final thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the future of money is not set in stone. It's a story that we're all writing together. And the choices we make today will determine what that future looks like. So let's all work together to create a financial system that is innovative and fair and, sustainable for everyone.
I love that. It's a message of hope and empowerment. We all have a role to play in shaping the future. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope you keep exploring and questioning and engaging in these conversations about the future of finance. It's a topic that affects all of us, so let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those minds open to the endless possibilities.